I've been waiting all my life for something. I've been down the darkest roads and up in the clouds, but I've always felt that something's missing. That was until I found you right there in the crowd. You came into my life and started a fire. You made me feel like I could touch the sky. Oh, there's nothing missing now that you're my desire. Now all I have to do is to make you mine. 'Cause I know, and you know what we could be. Like a song, like a perfect melody. Baby, don't say you don't believe in me. 'Cause you know, and I know, we're onto something good. You know, and I know, we got something good.
I don't know about y'all, but that song gets me riled up. Welcome back to the village. I'm your host, Kim Jordan, here with Conversations with Kim. And this is season 2, episode 2. And we have an awesome guest. So if you have any questions, we hope we can get to them. Put them in the chat. You know how it is, village. We want you to feel comfortable, take off your shoes, get your Kool-Aid, your coffee, whatever you're going to have, and come on and be empowered and enlightened by our guest and her story. I do believe this is going to be something that's going to open up your understanding concerning autism. Today, we are going to have Donna Wingler. She is the mother of 2 boys. She's a wife, and she has over 13 years as a licensed and certified occupational therapist. Please, village, help me welcome Donna.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey, Kim. How you doing?
Donna. I'm fine. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. We are here to talk about you being a parent of a child with autism during COVID.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so I wanted to kind of share just a few facts that there's 1 in 54 children in the US that has autism, and 1 in 160, worldwide that has autism. So this is definitely something that we are dealing with on a bigger scale that doesn't get as much exposure.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I
So
agree.
thank you for agreeing to come on. You have 2 boys, is that right?
Yes, I have 2 boys. My eldest is Solomon, and he's 10 years old. He's in the 4th grade. And then I have Edwin, who is 6 years old. He's in kindergarten, and he is my little boy that is nonverbal, and he has autism.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. So with a small child being diagnosed as with autism, how do you, I'm just trying to understand, how was that even diagnosed? How did you know that he had autism?
Well, we didn't know initially. He started off talking and speaking like a normal child. As a baby, he was like a regular child, you know. It wasn't until he started having ear issues, and we took him to the ear, nose, and throat doctor. They found fluid in his ears, and they put tubes in his ears. And typically, once you get tubes in your ears, you start talking. Well, he was talking. He lost language. Let me go back. Then they put the tubes in his ears, and we were expecting him to start talking. We knew he could hear better because when we turned the faucet on, he jumped. He had never heard the faucet in the sink come on before, but he didn't start talking. And he stopped looking at us when we were talking to him. He stopped answering to his name. and we called the ENT, and she said that's not typically what happens. When we took him to the pediatrician and they do the developmental profile checklist, he wasn't meeting his developmental goals. He wasn't walking on time, but some kids, they walk a little slower than others. And she recommended we get him tested for autism. So we called Early Steps in, and, they thought maybe he was just delayed. And so eventually we took him to a pediatric neurologist, and he assessed him and agreed he should be tested for autism. And at 2, he was diagnosed with moderate autism. So that's when he was diagnosed at 2 years old. And he never did regain his language. He's still nonverbal. He does have pop-up words. He'll say phrases or words sporadically, and then for months you won't hear anything. And then again, all of a sudden he'll say some words, and then for months you won't hear anything. But he has had ongoing therapy since before he was actually diagnosed. And so he does have great eye contact now. He does answer to his name. He understands exactly what you tell him to do. He can walk, he can run, he can jump, he can climb. Great sense. He understands. He's even sneaky like the typical mischievous child, but he cannot speak, like we're having a conversation, So yeah.
Okay. So I'm assuming that pre-COVID, you had a system in place that worked, and it was kind of like running water in your home. Tell me just a little bit about the system that you had and how that worked.
Well, at the time before COVID, actually, even when COVID started, but prior to that, he was in pre-K, going to elementary school in person. It was an autism classroom, 5 kids. He was one of the 5. He loved going to school. He did great in school, one-on-one with the teacher. He learned a little differently than everybody else. He doesn't point to things. He would get up in the morning. He had a routine. He knew when we walked in the room, it was time to eat breakfast, time to get dressed. He would grab your hand. He was ready to go to the front door and go off to school. He even recognized the landmarks on the way to school out the window, and he would go to school. He knew when it was time to come home. He had a snack waiting. He could watch his little shows on TV. He loves his iPad. He loves to learn and play educational games on his iPad. He knows how to find educational shows on YouTube on his own. He loves to play with his brother. He is a very picky eater, but he likes what he likes. He's very opinionated, non-verbally. And he fits in with the rest of the family. He likes to go for walks every evening in the neighborhood with his daddy. And he loves to play with water, but you have to supervise him with the water play. But he's not impulsive. He's very cautious. So that was his routine every day. He did the same thing every day. And on the weekend, he played with his balls and his toys.
So to me, it sounds like he had normal activity prior to COVID, and the only difference was he had autism.
And he doesn't have a lot of meltdowns either. I know a lot of people hear about meltdowns with kids with autism, but he doesn't have a lot of meltdowns.
Okay. Okay. So tell me a little bit about after COVID, how that has changed your life and how you all have had to adjust.
Okay. Well, when COVID first hit, of course, they closed all the schools. Initially, it wasn't virtual. It was pretty much because none of the teachers were really prepared. It was all of a sudden. And so from March to May, it was kind of like the teachers just kind of calling, texting, emailing activities, trying to get you to do things at home. Well, my son was not having that. He was like, why am I not going to school? He would wake up and look at us like, I'm not going to school. Like, what's the deal? He was okay with just kind of doing things around the house. But when I would try to do any kind of educational school type activity that his teacher was doing, he was like, brick wall, you are not my teacher, you're my mommy. And that is like two separate categories. And he does do the brick wall. He will brick wall you in a second. And that, and that's just how he is. And anyone that knows Edwin knows that. And so I would tell his teacher, Miss Hogan, he's not letting me do anything. And she says, I'm having that problem with all of my parents. Okay. And so what I did was I tried to look at whatever skill she was trying to teach, and I would find toys and activities that he liked at home that mimic those skills. And so I played with him while teaching the same skills she was trying to teach at school. So I had to kind of trick him into doing fun stuff, you know, and so that's what we did. Into learning. And then when everything became virtual this August with his new teacher in kindergarten, he enjoys seeing her face on the computer screen because he likes computers and iPad. They started off with 15-minute increments to see if they could hold his attention. And everything was new, so it was fun, and she was fun, and he loved it. And then it turned into 30-minute increments, and when he realized I'm doing schoolwork, it was kind of like, oh, okay, because it's 3 30-minute sessions, but they break them up, you know. Okay. And the first session is okay, it's fun, it's all about the calendar, they have songs, it's fun, you know. Not crazy about math, not crazy about language, but he'll sit there and do it kind of, you got to kind of keep redirecting them, you know, to the screen. And he has speech virtually as well. So speech therapy. Yeah. Okay. So he was able to stay in front of the screen and focused, even though there was a little bit of back and forth, but he stayed. Yes, and it's a little difficult too because his dad is the one at home during the daytime doing school with him, and I'm working, and I get more results out of him with that type of thing than Daddy does, and so it's kind of like he thinks Dad is fun, and not work. So it's kind of a tug of war. So you know, yeah, it's a little different. And so, what would be some of his responses to Dad? He would try to, in the beginning, he would try to pull Daddy away from the computer, and Daddy would have to put him back in the chair and say, no, you know, we got to do schoolwork. And that's the difference. When he was in person, he knew to sit at the table with the teacher in the classroom. That wasn't a skill he didn't have. Yeah. At home, I'm at home, you know, why am I sitting at a table looking at a computer screen with this lady I met over the computer, you know, I don't know her, you know, she's not my old teacher, you know. Right. And we had to keep reinforcing, this is your new teacher, you know, it's okay. And she's a good teacher. She's fun. She is also an autism teacher, you know, she's his kindergarten teacher, still only 5 kids in the classroom, but it's one-on-one with her. And one little kid does pop in every now and then, and he does well when there's another child present. So that's pretty much how it goes. Now that we've been doing it for a while, I think is bored with it, and he's not as involved as he used to be with his second and third 30-minute session. She loses him, and that's when I find communication is very important with the parent and the teacher, and letting her know, look, I find he likes to do this, so maybe you need to include that in the lesson, you know. And they appreciate the communication. Okay. And so would you say that he's getting the same quality education, that his learning is at the same rate because he's at home? No, I've seen some regression. Things that he was up on top of in the pre-K class that his teacher was blown away with. I don't think he's retained some of those skills because he does better in person. He's more of a hands-on learner with not just with having manipulatives, which are the actual items they teach with in person, which she sent all of those things to the house, but it's different when the teacher's in front of him doing those things with him than mommy and daddy pretending to be the teacher and the teacher on the computer screen mimicking, the activity. It's not the same. And we don't have the touch that the teacher has, in person with our child, because again, he sees us as mommy and daddy. He doesn't see us as the teacher. It's not the same relationship. And he knows the difference, he knows the difference. Even as a therapist, I know how to do all these different things with him, but he doesn't look at me as his therapist. He looks at me as his mommy, so it's a different reaction. So, yeah.
And I want to bring up something that we talked about before we came on air. We were talking about how he's been disrupted twice. Mm-hmm. And so can you share a little bit about that? Because that has a lot to play into what he's dealing with right now.
Okay, so anyone familiar with kids or adults with autism, they usually have a routine, at least for my son, there's a routine. And he is used to his room. He's used to his environment. He's used to his things being where they are. He's used to doing things a certain way. He does not like things to change. He's not big on change. He has an issue with transitions. And that's when you change his way of doing things. It takes a long time for him to adapt from one thing to this new thing. Even when he started a new school, it took 2 or 3 months for him getting used to going to this new school. So not only did we have to deal with COVID and going from being in school in person to virtual, we used to live in Lake Charles, where Hurricane Laura came through in August and destroyed our city. It not only destroyed our city, it destroyed our home. We lost our home. And we were forced to move to Baton Rouge. He was fine with going from hotel to hotel because my son likes to travel. He likes to ride on long rides in the car. He likes to go to hotels and jump from bed to bed and look out the windows. And he loves adventure. He does not. Now, once you stay somewhere for a long period of time that is not his house, not his room, he starts realizing this is a different space and I'm ready to go home. Well, when we moved into this new house that we're renting right now, he realized he wasn't going home. And this was not his room and this was not his house. And that's when we started seeing mini meltdowns. And we noticed, okay, Edwin realizes we're not going back. And he was not happy. He would have outbursts. He would start hitting his head on things. He would start rocking. He would start throwing things. And this is something I wanted to mention later on, but that's when I think you need to find a corner or a room somewhere that you can make a safe space for your child. So when they have little meltdowns, they can find a corner or a room that's just for them where they can calm themselves down. And they can try to self-regulate, or you can help them self-regulate. So we took the foyer that nobody used in this house that had a separate set of doors, because everybody comes to the back door in our house. And we made a sensory room. We bought pillows and blankets and we put them all on the floor in a corner. We got soft music. We got little LED lights that change colors. You could get all kinds of little lights, that soft lights. We got putty and Play-Doh and balls and puzzles, things that he enjoys. No electronics. Take him away from the electronics. Somewhere he can go that's away from everybody else and just calm down. And he would take his little blanket. He carries his blanket everywhere he goes. He would take his little blanket and he would go in there when he had enough of us and enough of his room and enough of his computers. And he would go in there and he would play with all of his little quiet stuff. He had the little kiddie trampoline. And he would go jump on his trampoline and calm himself down. He would play with the lights. He would play with his quiet toys. And when he got tired of being there, he'd come back and go play with all the loud stuff and all his regular toys, like, regular kids, and join the rest of the family. And we started noticing a decrease in the meltdowns. And sometimes you could even do just joint compressions where you just squeeze the arm lightly and hold it and just work your way up the arms or up the legs. I'll give them bear hugs for a few seconds. They like deep pressure, and that would help him too. And so those are just things that we found to help him calm down, and we don't have meltdowns anymore.
Okay.
Yes.
Donna, I'm learning some things from Edwin because I believe we need some little space in the, some quiet space areas in our own home that would help us to decompress. I mean, that's an awesome idea. And so you mentioned earlier that Edwin knows how to communicate to get his point across, to get to have a conversation with you. Can you share a little bit about his communication style?
We use the PECS system, PECS, where he has picture cards of like real items that he uses. And we put little magnets on the back and they stick on the refrigerator. And when he wants something that's familiar to him, like a cup or his iPad or some cookies or something he likes to eat or a specific toy, he pulls it off the refrigerator and he brings it to us. If he's having a lazy day, sometimes he does, and he doesn't feel like getting the card. If he can reach it, he brings it to us. Or he'll take you by the hand and he'll pull you to what he wants. He also has his own little specific ways of, when you have a child, you have your own way of communicating with them. And that's part of how, part of the way that speech therapy helps. They help the child learn how to communicate with people that's not in the home with them, because when they leave the house, a stranger's not going to know what they mean by a certain look. You know what I'm saying? But with the parents and like my mom who lives with us and his brother, we know what certain facial expressions mean. When Edwin looks at us a certain way, we know he's not happy. We know when he's being goofy. We know when he's happy, but other than pulling us to it or he shakes his head no now. That's his new thing. He knows how to say no. So he shakes his head no. He tells his teacher no. On virtual when he doesn't want to do something. And the first time he did that to her, she had to laugh. She's like, I think he just told me no. I said, my husband said, I think he did. So she kind of changed the activity up a little bit. But when he's sad, he pokes his lip out. And it's kind of the cutest little thing you ever seen, but he pokes his little lip out and he's like, he's sad. But he does that. But the most, I guess, normal way of communicating that he has is he brings those cards to you to show you what he wants. We're trying to get him to learn a communication system on his iPad where he points to a picture and the iPad talks and tells you what it says. We're trying to learn that. We haven't started yet. We just put it on his iPad. So and that's pretty much what he does. He picks the card up off the refrigerator and gives it to us. And he points the things. Yes, ma'am.
Well, then that's a start. I think that iPad app would be phenomenal if you kind of graduated to that. Yeah. We do have one question. Yolanda Martin is asking, how old is Edwin?
He's 6. He made 6 in November.
And so that puts him in what grade now?
He's in first grade, in kindergarten, because his birthday is after August. So you know how they have that whole, you can't start kindergarten if your birthday is after August kind of thing. So both of my kids are like that. So yes, ma'am. He's in kindergarten.
So I want to encourage the village that if you have questions or even if you know someone that has an autistic child, we're getting some pearls here of information that we just are not familiar with for those of us that are not in that environment. And so I know you had some other tips that you wanted to share. Donna, what would that be?
I would say if you have a child, like Edwin is doing virtual learning during COVID because he has a compromised immune system. I know it's not the optimal type of way you would teach a child with autism. Being in the classroom is preferable. But if you are a parent that has a child with autism or any kind of developmental delay and they're learning virtually right now, I would say the most important thing to do is to have a routine. A routine is very, very important to help them know what to expect. I would say get a visual schedule with pictures on it. They sell them on Amazon. You can probably even make your own and add a little Velcro to the back of it and stick it on the schedule and bring them to it as you go through it to show them the picture, just to let them know what's coming up next. So they're not caught off guard. You won't have many meltdowns, kind of like a little checklist to just show it to them, and they can even help you take it off as they do it. And then after you do that, I would say give rewards. If they go through half of the day without having a meltdown, give them a reward. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be something they enjoy doing. Help them get that extra energy out. My son likes taking walks through the neighborhood. That's how we get the extra energy out. My husband takes him for a walk every single day, and he loves that. So that's what we do. We let him play with, we don't let him get soaking wet every day, but he likes to play with the water in the sink. So we'll supervise him, let him have water play. Give them some sensory activities. We make sensory bins. You can put like sand, raw rice, raw beans, help them find little toys in it. They love that type of stuff. He loves doing that. The little water beads. Also, look at Medicaid waiver programs in your state and see what kind of services they provide for non-traditional therapies that they can get done. That's just my husband. He said Medicare. He meant Medicaid. I see him pop up on the comments section. He told me to mention that, so I just threw that in just now. The Medicaid waiver programs, yes, ma'am. Also, communication with the teachers is a big, big deal. Please talk to the teachers in the supporting therapies that your children may be getting. They can get them virtually. Y'all all need to communicate to see what can work best for your child, even virtually. You are your child's expert. You know your child better than anybody else. You know what works for them. So the teacher doesn't know. You live with the child. The therapist doesn't know. If there's something that you could tell them that could help them get across to your child better virtually, it may be something that's not traditional. Who cares? If it works, it works. Tell them. They'll be open to, they'll be happy to hear from you. You have to communicate. That's a big deal. And spend time with your child. Just because they may frustrate you sometimes because you don't know what to do, just think outside of the box. Do crazy stuff. Play with food. They may get messy, so what? Clean it up. Just have fun. Spend time with them. Bring your other children in to play with them and do crazy things, And that's what we do over here. We do all kind of crazy stuff. We are so non-traditional in this house. Right. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, well, that's a lot. That's some very helpful tips, especially for someone that doesn't have those resources, may not have a support system. So that's a lot of information that you've shared there. I know that we had a question from Frances, and she was asking, what type of learning style does Edwin have?
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you, Frances. That's a good point. A lot of kids and adults on the spectrum, not all, but a lot of kids and adults learn best visually. They're visual learners. So a lot of times, a lot of people, everybody has different learning styles. A lot of people like to talk and teach verbally, but pictures and items in person, showing them how to do something instead of just telling them how to do it, is the best way to teach. And that's what works for Edwin. If you show him in repetition, doing it over and over and over and over again, because a lot of kids with autism have a developmental delay. So you have to do it over and over and over and over. You may get tired of doing it, but over and over and over and over and over and over again is what works, and visually.
Okay.
And that's his learning style.
Awesome. Awesome. Listen, this has been a power-packed episode. Donna, thank you so much for being our guest. Village, thank you for coming and supporting and learning more about autism. Like I said, there are 1 in 54 children in the US and 1 in 160 worldwide. So we definitely need to bring more exposure to this topic. I'm going to go ahead. Go ahead.
One more thing, in your states, you should look, or in your cities, you should look for your local autism society, and they could also give you a lot of support and resources in your area for what to do with your child, or help for your child, or just people like us who have kids, other people like us that have kids with autism, to bounce ideas off of, and things that you may need, or doctors, therapists, therapies, different things that you might need to help you with your child.
Okay. Well, we definitely need to bring you back. We're out of our time right now. So we just want to thank you so much for coming. And we definitely will have you back for a follow-up so we can see how young Edwin is developing.
All right. Well, thank you for having me again.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right.
So the Village, thank you so much again for joining. We will be back next week. We have a very special guest. Again, this month is dealing with children. And so we're going to talk about the diversity of educational options, homeschooling, things of that nature. So please, come back and tag some parents that are looking at homeschool options. This is going to be phenomenal. And remember, silence creates distance, but conversations with Kim builds the village. Thank you and bye-bye.